Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. In this one we're going to be looking at solving some dilemmas for game week 8. So going to have a look at a few players, have a look at whether we should keep them, sell them, buy them. And to start with, we are looking at Luis Diaz. Now for me, Luis Diaz is a definite sell. I did mention a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about wildcards for game week 6, and a lot of people included Diaz in their wildcard in game week 6. I said that I would avoid Luis Diaz, and the reason why was just because, one, I didn't think he could keep up with his stats. His numbers were a joke in the first 5 game weeks, to be fair, and he was overperforming all of his numbers, so that was always going to come down. Even if that did come down though, he was still good at that rate. Even if he kind of regressed to his mean, he still would have got plenty of returns at that rate. But the main problem was his minutes. Now, we saw that in game week 4, I believe it was. I think it was the Nottingham Forest game, whenever that happened. The manager, Arne Slot, did say that he was due to bench him for that game and rest him. But he came back fresher than Gakpo, I think it was. So he ended up playing. So the signs were very much there that he and Gakpo would definitely be sharing minutes in that left wing role. So that's the reason that I thought he was an avoid, and I still do. I think that he just is a sell now. You're not gonna. Most weeks he probably will play, but he won't play every single game. And another factor is his fixtures. You can see on screen here: Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. Chelsea at home isn't necessarily the worst fixture. I don't think their defence is fantastic, but it's not kind of a really bad defence. Arsenal away is one of the toughest fixtures you can get. So I just don't think Luis Diaz is a player to keep right now. From game week 10 onwards, they have got some good fixtures, especially that Southampton away fixture. But I just would personally sell him. I don't think that for his price, I think there's so many other good options that have better fixtures than him and are more likely to get more minutes. So let's actually move on and look at one of the players who I do think is better than him at a similar price. Okay, so the next player we're looking at is Brennan Johnson, and should we be buying him? Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, I think that Brennan Johnson is the perfect replacement for Luis Diaz in your teams. He's cheaper than him, which is great. And since he's locked down this right wing role with Kulusevski kind of playing in a right number 8 position, Brennan Johnson's been brilliant. Now, one thing to note is we won't see him playing 90 minutes much. I can almost guarantee that. He is always good for an early sub, but I don't think that's particularly a problem with Brennan Johnson because his numbers are just great. Spurs fixtures for the next 4 are brilliant. You can see here West Ham at home, Crystal Palace away, Villa at home and Ipswich at home. 3 home games in the next 4, and the West Ham game and the Ipswich game in particular are fantastic because both defences haven't been great. So I think that he is definitely a great option. We've seen that kind of Odegaard and Son and Richarlison are on their way back now. I still don't really think that affects his minutes that much. We might see Odegaard take a few more minutes from him potentially, but I'm not 100% sure if Odegaard is actually fit like right now. I think that might be a problem for the coming weeks rather than right now. But yeah, for me the fixtures are great. I am looking at tripling up on Spurs myself. Whether that I've already got Porro in my team, I'm definitely going to get Solanke. So I just need to decide whether I want Son, whether I want Johnson, whether I want Maddison, all of which are good options to be honest. Whichever of those attackers you pick, I think they're all great options. I'm just looking at ones that potentially have better minutes and potentially penalties in Son. But yeah, I think the time is kind of perfect to move off of maybe some Arsenal assets, some Chelsea assets, potentially Liverpool assets for a couple of weeks. While they don't have the best fixtures, they all kind of play each other. Whereas for the next 4 weeks, Spurs players look great, and then from game week 12 onwards, we can move back onto these Chelsea players, we can move back onto these Arsenal players, and from game week 10 we can move back onto Liverpool players. So I think for the short term, Spurs players are great, and Johnson is just at a great price. Okay, so staying on Spurs, Solanke is a fantastic option at the moment. He has potentially penalties. We're not really sure whether Son will be taking them or Solanke will be taking them. If I had to bet on it right now, I would put my money on Son, but I'd probably have it at around 70-30 at the moment to Son. We could see Solanke taking penalties. He's taken them for Bournemouth and he's got a good record, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. His numbers have been great. He's in the top 5, top 10-ish for XG in the league so far, and he's only played 5 of the 7 games, so his numbers are fantastic. We have seen him play in a slightly more deeper role sometimes, but I don't think that's particularly impacting his numbers in any way, so I do expect him to continue to return, continue to get goals, continue to get assists. I think he's a fantastic option, and actually Spurs in general have some of the best attacking numbers in the league this season. Purely XG, they're top, above Liverpool, and they're in the top 4 for big chances, shots and goals. So Spurs attackers are definitely ones to target at the moment, and I think Solanke is at the forefront of that. Okay, moving on to Cole Palmer now. Now, we've seen throughout this season how he can just put up ridiculous points hauls, and it's no surprise that nearly 200,000 of you have bought him in this week. However, for me, I wouldn't be buying him. That is purely down to the fixtures. You can see on screen Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, Man United away, Arsenal at home. Now, the 2 red ones, Liverpool away, Arsenal at home, they are definitely bad fixtures. There's no 2 ways about it. The 2 in the middle, I don't think are particularly bad fixtures. Newcastle at home, Newcastle have been pretty bad this season. Apart from the game against City, they've been very bad, in fact. Man United away, we've seen throughout this season, and to be honest, the last year, Man United defence isn't elite in any way, shape or form. So I don't hate those 2 middle fixtures. It's the Liverpool away this week and the Arsenal at home in game week 11, I believe, that are the problem. That's not to say that Palmer can't return in these games. He absolutely can. But I think there are options that have better fixtures that you can bet on for the next 4 weeks. So, as I mentioned, the likes of Son maybe, or you could go down to cheaper options. There's one we'll talk about in a second, actually, that I think is an interesting option, but I just think that I wouldn't be buying Palmer right now with these fixtures. I would wait until game week 12 when Chelsea's fixtures get absolutely brilliant. He's almost a must-own from game week 12, but I'd just wait a few weeks. Okay, this is another player, Bukayo Saka, who has been bought in by 200,000 FPL managers. Now, for me, he's just a similar situation. If you own Saka, I don't think you need to sell him by any means. But if we look at the next fixtures, Bournemouth away this week is fine. He definitely can be kept for this week. Then it's Liverpool at home, which is a bad fixture. Newcastle away, Chelsea away. 2 kind of average fixtures. They're not particularly bad, but they're also not that great. It's the Liverpool at home fixture that is the problem. Liverpool's defence has been great. So, again, I don't think I'd be buying Saka right now. We obviously saw last week what he can do. He got 3 returns. So, definitely a great asset, don't get me wrong. But, again, there's just options with better fixtures right now who I think we can bet on for the next few weeks. So, if you own him, he's a hold. But if you don't own him, I would probably wait a few weeks to buy Saka, because once again, the fixtures from game week 12, game week 13-ish, they're absolutely brilliant for Arsenal. So I think you can just hold off a few weeks. Okay, so when we were talking about Saka and Palmer, I mentioned that there are some players with better fixtures at the moment. Talked about Son and potentially other Spurs midfielders like Maddison or Johnson. Another option is Phil Foden. Now, his minutes haven't been great this season. Don't get me wrong, they've been pretty terrible. But with De Bruyne out, I think it's very, very likely that Foden starts, certainly this week, and it's probably quite likely that he starts next week. and they're the two money fixtures really. You've got Wolves away and you've got Southampton at home. So if you wanted to take like a kind of 2, maybe even 3 or 4 week punt, then I think Phil Foden is a good option if you believe in his minutes. The difficulty comes when De Bruyne comes back. We don't really know when that is, but I think it will be quite soon. And it will be interesting to see how Pep fits Foden and De Bruyne in the same team. We're yet to see kind of how that will unfold this season, but we should get Phil Foden for Wolves away and for Southampton at home. The 2 weeks after that, potentially not, but he should get good minutes in the short term. Then, like I say, from game week kind of 11, 12 onwards, you can move to the likes of Saka, the likes of Palmer. So it would only be a short-term punt anyway. So I think that Phil Foden is a pretty good option. The only issue is potentially the expected minutes. But yeah, that's it for this one. If you've got any other questions that I haven't covered in this, then drop them in the comments. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.